We have to get that in before I hit play.
We have
to get that in before I set it. We don't really do too much shifts with cotangent and tangent and all that fun stuff, so we're just going to work on this. All right, so as you've noticed, I hope from the previous homework, the number in front of sine or cosine is your amplitude. We're going to call it A. So amplitude. And by the way, you always take the absolute value of that. If it's negative, all that does is it actually flips the sign, which we'll find out today. That's what happens. So A for amplitude. The number that's next to the x, the number like pi, or it could be 2 or 1/2, whatever, we'll call it B. That helps you figure out your period. Now, your period for sine and cosine is always 360 unless there's another number here. Then what you do is you take 360 or 2 pi, because we're going to be actually working with pi today, and you divide it by the absolute value of that number. By the way, these two are the two of the most commonly found questions on ACT and SAT about the trigs. I don't know why. They like the amplitude and the period. They always talk about it most often. All right, then we got a new number here, C. This C refers to what's called the phase shift. Now, what that means is, just think about with me when we learned how to do translation of functions. If you were with the parent, where did you move? Did you go up and down or right and left? If you were with the parent, which way did you move? Do you remember? It's been so long.
Right and left.
You move right and left.
Yes.
Good job, 50-50. Okay, so this number will tell you to move right or left. However, this is actually where it starts on the x-axis once you set bx plus c equal to 0, and that's where you start on the x-axis. You actually have to set that whole thing equal to 0, and that'll tell you where your starting point is going to be. All right, and then our last one is, we'll call it the number on the outside, D. And you know this, when you move, when you're on the outside of your parent, that tells you you go up or down. That's what we call our vertical shift. D. That goes up or down. We also refer to it as our midline. Midline. All right, so here's what we're doing today. I'm actually going to do 4 of your very own homework problems. Yay! So if you have your packet, you can take out your packet. I'm going to do 4 of them for you, and then you'll just do the rest tonight. But keep this all in mind. Your A is your amplitude, your B is your period. Fun, fun, fun. I'm going to start with example 2, because we'll keep it easy, and then we'll work our way to the harder ones.
Where is this at?
On that page right there, number 2.
The small one?
Yes, the very small one. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just didn't want to make that many more copies. I'm saving trees. Okay. Does it say 4 sine pi x? Is that correct? If you're looking at the right one, it should say 4 sine pi x. Okay. So first things first, this is a sine graph. So if you remember, there were 2 graphs that we learned about. Sine starts right here in the middle at 0. Then it goes up, middle, down, up. That's always what sine looks like. Cosine, so this is sine. You always want 5 points, by the way, on everything we do tonight. I want to see 5 points. We're going to have 5 particular points to make sine. Cosine actually starts up here, then goes down again, up, up. That's what cosine looks like, okay? So when we graph a sine, we're going to look like that. When we graph a cosine, we're going to look like that. You just have to draw 1 cycle tonight. That's it. 1 cycle, not 2 cycles, not 3, 1. Just getting used to drawing sines and cosines. All right, so let's answer these questions that they have here. Period, amplitude, reflection, phase shift, and a vertical shift. Okay. This number outside of sine, what does that refer to? Look up at the chart I just gave you. That is your amplitude. So that means your sine curve is going to go as high as 4 and as low as -4. The period is 2 pi over the b. The b is the number next to x. So I want 2 pi over, what's my number next to x? Pi. What's 2 pi divided by pi? 2. So now, let's see, reflection. Is there any kind of reflection going on? No, there's no negative. So none, you don't even have to write there. Is there a phase shift? No, there's not really any C going on. Is there a vertical shift? Any number on the outside here? I mean, that number is next to sine, that's our amplitude, but there's no number adding or subtracting, so there's no vertical shift. So this is really an easy one. So here's what you're gonna do on your graph. You're gonna go as high as 4. You're gonna go as low as -4. You're gonna create 5 points always. Your first point being here at the 0 mark, so that it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So really 4 little dashes after the 0 y-axis. This last one is gonna be 2, because we're gonna do 1 full period of this. You could do a halfway in between 0 and 2. What's halfway between 0 and 2? You should know that. 1, so 1 goes there. You can do that if you want to, it doesn't matter. I really just want a start and an end. And then what you're gonna do is draw sine. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. You're actually gonna make a box. This one you don't really need to because most of you probably could figure it out. But in the ones we do later, I actually create a box. My one cycle, that looks terrible, is gonna live right in here. Doesn't that make sense? It's gonna go as high as 4, low as -4. It's gonna go only up to 2, my one cycle. Okay, so now I'm gonna plot my points. I'm gonna start right here in the middle because we're doing a sine. On the next hashed little mark, I'm gonna go all the way up. So I go middle up, back to the middle at 1, down, and then back to the middle. And then I just kind of connect the dots. And that is 4 sine pi x. That's all you have to do. Easy. You could do this in your sleep. What do you think? All right, now I'm gonna do number 10.
How'd you
How'd I what?
know to go to 2? What is the period?
Yes, correct. All right, number 10, if I'm drawing this correctly, bingo. Does it say y equals negative sine x plus pi over 2 plus 1? Okay. All right, think about this with me right now. First of all, just think about all the translations that are going on right here. What is that plus 1 doing? Where's it moving? Up 1. So take your little sign that looks like a snake, move it up 1. What's that pi over 2 shifting? Which way? To the left, pi over 2. That's where you start. What's that negative doing?
Flipping.
It's flipping it. So here's what I mean, just for those of you who kind of don't know. Here's what sine normally looks like, right? You go here, then you go up, middle, down. Flipping it would go here, down, middle, up. Like it would actually go like that. Does that make sense? Instead of you starting in the middle and going up, you start in the middle right here and go down. All right, but I'll show you that in a minute. Let's answer these questions. Let's do our period. Let's do our amplitude. Reflection, which yes, there is a reflection, so I'm just gonna write yes. Phase shift, and then your vertical shift. All right, so my period is 2 pi over b. What is your b? What's your b?
1.
1, so 2 pi over 1 is just
360.
2 pi, yep, 360. Amplitude, what's the number in front of sine? -1, but you take the absolute value of it, so it's just an amplitude of 1. Okay, and then vertical shift, what's this number outside right here? That's your vertical shift. It's now at also 1. But let me talk about this phase shift real quick, okay? Your phase shift, you take what's in the parenthesis, x plus pi over 2, you set it equal to 0, and you solve. What would x equal? Negative pi over 2. This is where you start. That is where the graph is going to start. Are you all with me on that one? But I do want to see your cycle end. Well, how long is my cycle? Well, my cycle is 2 pi. So what you're going to do, you need to make one cycle for me. You are going to add 2 pi to that number. But when you add 2 pi to a negative pi over 2, we've done this before. What do you really add? What have we really added when we add 2 pi? We add what over what? 4 pi over 2. Remember doing that? Negative pi over 2 plus 4 pi over 2 gives you what? 3 pi over 2. This is where you end. This is where you start. This is where your cycle ends. I need to see those if you have a phase shift. So let me graph this for you and help you out so you can understand this better. So on your little graph right here, we're going to actually start bottom all the way up. I'm going to make a vertical shift at 1, meaning I'm going to move this line right here up 1. So I'm going to make a dashed line. Because this bottom right here, this line, this x-axis is no longer my midline. This is my midline. This is my midline. Okay? I am going to have an amplitude of 1. So from this line right here, from this middle line, I'm going to go up 1. I'm going to go down 1. My graph is going to live right here inside this. Does that make sense to you? God bless you. So if this is 1, this would be 0, this would be 2. Do you all agree to that? Okay. You are going to start at negative pi over 2. So I'm going to make one mark right here, and I'm going to call it negative pi over 2, or negative 90 degrees. And then I'm going to create, again, your magic number is 5 points. 5 points. This being your first point. This line right here, this axis being your next, that's 2, 3, 4, 5. Where am I going to end? What am I going to call this? What am I going to call this? 3 pi over 2. Let me box this out for you. My graph is living right here. It's between negative pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. Its middle line is right there. It goes up 1 and down 1. That's where my graph lives. Yes or no, did you kind of see that? If you didn't, we'll do another one, and I promise you, you'll pick it up. All right, now here's the only thing. This is a sine curve, so you want to start here and then go up, down, down, up. But that's not true, because remember, we have a reflection. So we start right here, and instead of us going up on the next line, where do we go? Down. Then on this hash mark, we go in the middle. This hash mark, we go now up. And then we go back to the middle. So your S curve needs to look flipped. That is the graph of negative sine x plus pi over 2 plus 1. Okay? Moving on. And if you didn't pick that up, I promise you, you will. The other class picked it up quite frequently. My pen looks like it's dying. I'm going to try this marker, but this marker was dying before. I'm going to do number 16. Next. And then I only got one more left, and we're done. And the rest is up to you. Y equals cosine x minus pi over 4 plus 2. See how much of this you can figure out right now. What's your period? What's your amplitude? Is there a reflection? Phase shift, vertical shift. See if any of that you can figure out. I'll help you out in a minute. Unless you got it. Thanks, honey. Anybody tell me anything they know right now? Off the top, I'm looking at the equation. Liam.
There is no phase shift.
There is no phase shift? Wrong. There's a phase shift. There's a phase shift.
Oh, wait, I'm doing 18.
Oh, okay. Then you're right on that one. All right, somebody tell me something else then. What's your period?
2 pi.
That's right, 2 pi. There's a 1 in front of the x, so it's just 2 pi over 1 or just 2 pi. What's your amplitude?
1.
The number in front of cosine, 1. But these two are questions on SAT or ACT, guys. You've got to get those two right. You have to. Okay? Reflection. Is there a reflection on this one? No. Is there a phase shift? Where?
Isn't it pi over 4?
It is pi over 4, okay? So x minus pi over 4 equals 0, set equal to 0. It equals pi over 4. That's where you start.
Don't you finish at 9 pi over 4?
And you finish at 9 pi over 4. How did you get that, Ben? You are correct. How did you get that? You add 8 pi over 4. You add, what? You're just brilliant. I know. Yes, you always add one of the cycles, one of the period. So I add a 2 pi, which is equivalent to 8 pi over 4, which ends at 9 pi. So this is what I want you to. I want you to start at pi over 4. I want you to end at 9 pi over 4. Is there a vertical shift? Up how much? 2. So this has been shifted up 2. Okay, so now let's go to graphing this. So let me show you where this graph lives right now. So first of all, start backwards. You are going to make a vertical shift at 2. So make a dashed line at 2. This is your midline. That's where your new x-axis is. You're going to go up 1, down 1. So really, what point am I at? I'm at 1, 2, 3, and here at 1. So the graph is living in between 1 and 3. Does that make sense to you? Okay. But where is it living this way? Well, I've shifted it over at pi over 4. So this first mark right here, I'm actually going to call it pi over 4. And I'm going to create, again, magic number, 5. This is my first mark. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What's that ending point? Ben already told us. 9 pi over 4. I like to make a little box because if not, I feel like I always go down to the wrong axis. But this is where I am living. This is where my graph lives. My one cycle. I have to draw this time cosine, not sine. Cosine starts up. Always starts up. It doesn't start in the middle. It starts on the up. So it starts up here. At the next hash mark, I go to the middle. The next hash mark, I go all the way down. Then I just reverse it. Up, up. And then I kind of make a little bit of a curve because obviously this is going to keep going and going and going and going and going and going. But that would be one cycle of cosine. Make sense? Let's do one more. Numero 20. And if by this time you don't get it, I don't know what's wrong with you. What is cosine?
Is this all the 1 through 22?
Yeah, sure. For you? Yeah. For Carson, actually.
No, not so.
All right, let's go through this. Period. What is it? 2 pi. There's a lot of 2 pi's, by the way. By the way, do you know what 2 pi is? Because I need to pause for a second because I could not tell you how many of my calculus students got this wrong and I was angry at them. Very angry, okay? A period of 2 means that on the x-axis you have 1, 2, 1, 2, right? Do you know what a period of 2 pi is? Do you know what 2 times pi is? It's 6.28. So you'd be here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.28. In terms of degree, though, if I change this axis to a degree, then I would call it then, 90 degrees, 180 degrees. That I change the actual unit. So 2 pi is really 2, and 2 pi is 2 is completely different than 2 pi. Completely different. Totally shifted. I was not happy when calculus could not understand that. What's my amplitude here? 3. What comes next? Reflection, is there one? No. Phase shift?
Negative pi.
Okay, so that is where I start. I'm going to add 4 pi over 2 to it, and I'm going to end at, that's your ending mark. See, you guys are doing great. Vertical shift, where am I at? -2, okay? All right, so now let's draw this. I will start at my vertical shift, so I'll go down to 2. I'll make a dashed line. That is my midline. It's my middle of my graph. I'm going to go up 3, 1, 2, 3. So I'm actually at the point 1. I'm going to go down 3 from the midline. 1, 2, 3. And that is -5. Okay, so my graph is living right here. I'm going to draw a cosine inside of here somewhere. I just want to know how wide it's going to be. So I know I'm going to start at -pi over 2. So I'm actually going to start right here on this side. -pi over 2. And I'm going to, again, make 5 marks, including this mark right here. So 1, axis would be 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm going to call that one 3 pi over 2. And then I like to draw a little box because I just want to make sure that I know where I'm living. This is where my one cycle will live. And again, cosine goes like this. It goes up, middle, down, middle, up. Up, middle, down. It just always starts up in that corner. So here at this first mark, up. Middle of the graph on the next line would be, here's your middle. On the next mark, it's down. Up, middle, down. Next mark back up. Next mark back up. And then you can make it a little like curvy if you want to. And that's it, y'all. Okay. So everybody, except for Carson, you can do just the evens. Just the evens, because you all didn't complain unlike others.
I'm not doing it.
I don't understand.
Okay?